What's going on, people? Very good evening to you all, man. We are back. The TBL Podcast, man. And listen, we had to come back for this one, man. We had to come back when we heard the news. We had to come back for this one. It feels good to be back. But as we do, let me just first of all introduce, you know who it is already, the main man right here in the building. Before everybody gets in the comments and says hello, let me just get, bring you back center stage, Laurie. Good to have you here, man. We've been away for 5-6 months, and we're back today. Good to be back.
It's both an honor and a pleasure to be back, man. And I'm okay. It's a nice warm day in London today, and it's all good.
It is good, man. We've already got Michael Maxwell in the chat here. Man, I ain't spoken to Michael Maxwell. All these guys are going to come flooding back, man. I ain't spoken to Michael Maxwell for a long time, man. So good to hear from you, bro. Good to hear from Himanshu in the chat as well. He's put, where did you guys go? We're back now, man. We had to come back for this one. Come back for this one as soon as the news became official. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Once we found that out, we just thought, you know what? Let's just run this back. Let's get the gang together. Let's talk about it, man. Let's discuss it. Let's hear everybody's opinion. And it feels good to be back. I'm not sure how long we're going to be back for, but we'll run this podcast today, and then we'll go from there, man. So let me first of all just shout out the main guy here, Harvey, in the building, supporting from day one. He's put here, the boys are back in town. Good to hear from my brother Harvey, man. To be fair, me and Harvey stayed in touch even outside of the
that's good.
So Harvey's a good brother, man. Francisco as well. Do you know what I mean? He's still here. Good to have Francisco back. Himanshu says, did you guys beef? Nah, I can't. I'm not gonna beef with my dad. So definitely not that. It's not that at all, bro. Dwayne B in the chat here. He says, good to see you both. Big up. Let's talk some boxing, man. Laurie, let me
as LL Cool J once famously said, don't call it a comeback. Talking of comebacks, right? I've got to say this quickly. Did you hear that? Apparently, James Toney and Razor Ruddock are going to do a exhibition fight in Jamaica. Apparently.
Yeah.
That is worrying, man. That is concerning. I mean, I think how old is James Toney? It must be late 50s, and I'm pretty sure Razor Ruddock was either 59 or 60. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know who's putting that on, but that is sad. If that is true, then that is sad. But anyway, carry on, Daryl.
Yeah, James Toney, he's 54 years old. Razor Ruddock, just getting his age now, 59 years old. Yeah.
Can't these guys find anything to do with their lives? I mean, have you listened to James Toney in the last, actually, it's more than a few years. The guy can hardly scramble a sentence together. Mm-hmm. So whoever's sanctioning this or allowing this to go ahead, man, they need their heads tested, man, because it's truly sad. It's truly sad. And people are going to say, but it's only an exhibition. But neither of those guys should be getting punched in the head at that age. And the people who are actually going to pay to watch that, what kind of people are they? But anyway, I digress.
It's unfortunately becoming a common theme, these exhibition type of fights. We saw it with Nigel Benn, a couple of years ago, they were talking about bringing him back. It's Floyd Mayweather still doing it. He's in his mid-40s now. It don't seem to be going anywhere. But
Pacquiao said he wants to come back and fight, didn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is kind of putting a dim on it because boxing has delivered this year, I have to say. And some of the fights we've got scheduled coming up as well, including this one, has been, a positive light, has shed a positive light on boxing, should I say. Let's just jump straight into it, man. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford is now official. We've been waiting on this fight for these two went face to face 5 years ago, I believe.
Yeah.
It was 5 years ago. Yeah. The hype for that fight was almost hitting its peak at that stage. None of us would have thought that it would have took 5 years for this fight to have been made. But obviously there has been a lot that's happened since that face-off between the two. Errol Spence had that car accident, that near fatal car accident. He also then had a detached retina. I believe he had an eye injury that put him out of action for a little while. So he's been through it, wear and tear. Crawford, he's had his promotional issues with Top Rank. He's been inactive, but we're here now. We're here, and it almost got to the point where I was tired of it. I didn't want to hear about it anymore. But as soon as the fight got announced, everything just started rushing back. The excitement, just the anticipation. This is for me, and I want to hear what you guys in the chat think. Harvey, Conrad, Dwayne, Francisco, all of you guys. I want to hear what you guys think, but this is no doubt, for me, the biggest fight since Mayweather Pacquiao.
Absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the biggest fight since Mayweather Pacquiao for me. We're going to get into the whole, how we see it going and everything else. But yeah, for me, the anticipation, 2 unbeaten welterweights, 2 guys in the top 5 pound for pound, undisputed, all the belts are on the line. One of the glamour divisions at welterweight. 2 great characters. This is, for me, what boxing is all about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. Since Mayweather Pacquiao, I think that was 2015.
Yeah,
it's 8 years ago. This will be, in my mind anyway, the biggest fight since then. I mean, a few months ago in March, we had that big fight between Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. Apparently, did 1.3 or 1.4 million pay-per-view buys. I don't think this fight will reach that number, although I'm not sure. I don't think it will. I mean, the Devin Haney-Lomachenko, that was a big fight. And I think the pay-per-view numbers for that were a little disappointing, I was saying. I think it was 150,000 and growing. So I would imagine that this will be in excess of 500,000, I would have thought, easily. But whether it will break the million or not. But listen, as a fan, I don't really too care about stuff like that. I'm pretty sure you don't. We just want to see the fighters fight. You know what I mean? So because although the Ryan Garcia and Tank, or the Tank versus Ryan Garcia, I should say, that did 1.3 million pay-per-view buys, this fight completely trounces that one in every aspect. Because I don't know about you, but there was something of the old YouTube boxing persona around that fight with Tank and Ryan, because I never viewed Ryan Garcia as a viable contender, really. And Tank didn't really have any legitimate belts, did he?
No.
I didn't think that Ryan Garcia deserved that fight. Indeed, I got into an argument with quite a few people. And I was saying, on what basis does Ryan Garcia deserve such a big fight? And I think that the evidence of that was shown in the actual fight itself and the way it ended. The guy's not ready for a fight of that magnitude, and it showed. But this one is the complete opposite. You're talking about 2 unbeaten world champions. In the case of Crawford, they've gone through the weights. Well, he started at lightweight, didn't he? When he beat Ricky Burns, he was a lightweight. When he came over to this country, I remember watching that fight. Gone up to light welter, became undisputed there, and now he's fighting. Went up to welter, relieved Jeff Horn of his titles. Every one of his defenses has been a stoppage. So yeah, it's a great fight. The only slight caveat on that is that the 2 guys, I think Crawford's 35, Spence is 33. You could make a case to say that both are possibly past their best. This fight should have taken place, like you said, at least 5 years ago. And depending on the fight we get, because when they fight, if and when they fight, I mean, there's still time for things to go wrong. We know what boxing's like. If the fight doesn't quite measure up to our expectations, there's going to be the obvious criticism of people to say, yeah, but that's because the 2 guys are past their best. So I'm just hoping it's a really good fight, you know what I mean? And when I say really good fight, I don't mean insofar as, they stood there and let their hands go. We're looking at 2 athletes displaying the type of skills that we expect at that level, you know what I mean? Slightly different to, was it just entertaining? We want to see the 2 guys really put on a show and show all their skills and abilities, not just their athleticism, you know what I mean? So, yeah, man, can't wait.
Harvey says here, I think it's the best fight since Mayweather Pacquiao, as the best versus the best, but I'm not sure it'll be the biggest since Mayweather Pacquiao. I think that's definitely fair.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough, man. Yeah.
Himanshu says here, every big fight is happening except for that Gypsy King Dosser. Didn't take
long. No, the Gypsy King's fighting. He's fighting the mighty Dempsey McKean, or a cruiserweight. He's fighting the Australian guy, apparently. It's between Dempsey McKean, the Australian low-level heavyweight, and Opitagu. who's the cruiserweight champion of the world. But listen, man, you guys know what I think about that guy, man. You know what I mean? And I think I've been proved right. When I was saying that the guy is not good for boxing, the way he conducts himself, a lot of people saying, yeah, you're a Gypsy King hater, this and that, and rare. Now you guys are all seeing the stuff that he pulled with Usyk. I mean, come on, bro. This is disgusting, really. Yeah. Blatant ducking. And then even, the way you try to treat Usyk and insulting the guy, calling him names and all the jingoistic nonsense that went with that. Very unsavory. And this is something that I've been saying about Tyson Fury from time, which is that he's a very disingenuous person. He lacks integrity. And in many ways, he's very bad for the sport. And I know some people might take issue with that, but I firmly believe that. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a very, very good fighter. Probably the best heavyweight out there right now. But for me, he's got to beat Usyk to totally prove that. But in terms of the way he conducts himself, and, some people are going to say, yeah, come on, Laurie, man, this and that. Why are you hating on him? He's an entertainer. No, not for me. I don't call that entertainment alone. It's crass. It's tacky. It's lacking in class. It's just not my cup of tea, bro. Not my cup of tea at all. I know some people think it's funny. I've got a couple of friends who think it's funny. And I'm always shaking my head in disbelief when people find their antics that he pulls funny. Because I think it's in very poor taste.
I think Harvey's right with this point here. He says, let's please not make this historical pod of Spence-Crawford about that flabby.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I agree with you there, Harvey. Let's look. Let me just answer this question from Himanshu, because it's a good question. He's put here, is this bigger than Triple G versus Canelo? Now, for me, it's a good question because like that fight there, Triple G and Canelo is likely going to have more sales. But for me, the bigger fight is this one. For me, well, I'm just thinking about the anticipation of that first fight. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that fight was a big fight. We all look forward to that. But I just think this one's got a little bit more star power to it. Because of the two characters involved. I just think this fight shades it, man. I think this is bigger.
Yeah.
I think if they get the promotion right, it's got the potential to be much bigger. And the reason why I say that, because it's two American fighters. So you think about, if they promote it worldwide and do the press conferences right, this has the potential to really, catapult itself right out there to be one of the biggest fights in recent years. Definitely bigger than Triple G versus Canelo.
This fight here, they were quite tactical as to when they put the date. And I know Francisco in the chat, he'll be able to attest to this as well. But they were quite tactical as to when the date of this fight would be made. They really wanted to push it for the summer because that is pretty much the off season for all the other American sports, American football, the NBA, I think baseball, maybe, I don't know. But those two in particular, it's the off season in those sports. And, they didn't want to have this fight clash with, one of them big schedules like the playoffs in the NBA that's going on right now or the start of the NFL season. So it was very important to get this fight in July, in the summer, in the off season where there's no distractions and it does give it the best chance it can get to be that big fight, So it's important to see, like how Harvey's saying it, it's important to see how they really push this out. Because if they really, I saw that they were on ESPN, which is, a huge network out there in America. They were both on there today. Both did they weren't going at each other, but they were just like promoting the fight. So that was pretty good. Yeah, we need to see a press conference. We need to get it out there, man. Do a tour, whatever you need to do. But it's going to be huge, I think. I think all the celebrities, particularly in the hip hop community, are going to show out for this one. You're going to see all the athletes for this one. Yeah, I can see this being really big. Good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that people have been waiting for this fight for so long, and like you said, they've chosen a date which avoids some of the other major sporting spectacles in America. That can only help it, And there is a rivalry there. I don't think the two of them hate each other, but there is a creative tension there, isn't it? There's a healthy rivalry. That will help to sell this fight. Crawford's already started with the Instagram stuff, saying he's caught the big fish. Obviously, the word big fish is the word that Errol Spence uses to describe himself. So, yeah, man, it started, and I can't wait. You know what I mean? I mean, how long have we got left now? It's July the 29th, so there's a couple of months left.
2 months. 2 months.
Yeah, so there's enough time in which to promote the fight. I hope that they do like well, it's not going to be a nationwide tour, obviously, but a countrywide tour, you know, the usuals in Los Angeles, in New York, and maybe a few other places, and that they can really genuinely build it. Because I think if they get it right, if they get the promotion right, this will really sell. I mean, it's interesting because I saw last week with the Devin Haney-Lomachenko fight, Devin Haney, and I think he was quite right as well. He was criticizing Lomachenko for not doing enough to sell the fight. Because if you noticed, a lot of the pre-fight stuff was all Devin Haney, wasn't it? Lomachenko just kept quiet. So
let me go to this comment here from Francisco because it's a good one, and I want to see if you agree with it. But he says here, for me, it's the biggest since De La Hoya in Trinidad. That was massive, though that disappointed. But like Floyd and Manny, Spence versus Crawford is years late. Now listen to this last sentence. I am infused. It's historic, but I'm not as infused as 3 years ago. Are you as infused for this now compared to 3 years ago? Are you as excited as you would have been? Or like, what's your general thought on it?
You know what? I can see where Francisco's coming from. And by the way, big up Francisco. He's also been following us on DR Sports Boxing. So appreciate the love, bro. Yeah, he does make some valid points, but I would disagree with him slightly because as soon as I heard about the fight, man, immediately my juices were flowing. I was thinking, yeah, man, you know, I mean, at last. I mean, let's face it, the two of them got nowhere else to go, really, have they? I mean, they could have taken other fights, but it would have been met with a large amount of disapproval by the public. I think them two guys know in their camps know that it makes absolute sense for them to fight each other. And yes, the likes of Francisco are right in saying that it's a little bit too late. But as I said before, I think if they get the promotion right and they really get stuck into it, I think that whilst people might have some initial skepticism about the fight being too late, trust me, once the fight comes around, if they get the promotion right, everybody will be tuned in. Everyone will be locked in, man.
Big up Shane in the chat, man. He's put here, yo, my peoples. Big up Shane. Obviously, he there supports you on DR Sports as well. Shane, a regular
big up Shane, man.
This show. We need to get Shane back on here as well, man, for sure. Yeah, big up Shane in the chat.
I wonder what Shane thinks of me and him. Was having a bit of a row last week when I said to him that that Devin Haney push at the weigh-in, I thought that's not a good move on so many levels. And we're finding out that he's been fined $400,000, which to me is way, way over the top.
Yeah.
Completely excessive, but, you know, I knew he was going to get fined, but 400,000, that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Canelo and Caleb Plant were throwing punches at each other. If you remember Terence Crawford himself, when he fought Benavidez, you know what I mean? That got a bit out there, you know what I mean? So, but anyway,
yeah.
Back to this fight, man. The build-up will be quite testy, I would imagine. Because like I said, I don't think there's hatred there, but there is that rivalry. And, you know, Crawford can be quite an edgy type of character when he's ready. And I think Spence will try and wind him up a bit. Well, they'll be winding each other up. But I think at times, man, it will get very edgy between the two of them.
One thing I will say is that boxing is on a trajectory right now. It's on the up.
Yeah, definitely.
To thank Garcia for helping that. Haney, Lomachenko. We've got some great fights scheduled. And I just think with the mood being as it is, you know.
Inoue Fulton.
Yeah, Inoue Fulton in the same week. That is actually. So with the mood being, I feel like that, you know, we are in a good position for this fight to do well. And it's one that I would encourage people to, you know, we all moan about pay-per-view. We're all like, you know what, man, I'm not paying pay-per-view for this. They're charging this. At least this is one fight where we could be like, you know what, I'll pay for this. You know.
Yeah, talking of pay-per-views, it'll be interesting to see what they charge in this country and abroad. I mean, I know in America, the prices they pay for pay-per-view are way in excess of what we pay here. You know what I mean? They pay like their bottom rung is about $60 going up to about 80, 90, whereas we tend to pay what? Anywhere between 20 and 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference in the two, you know what I mean? So, and not only that, it's a worldwide fight. So, you know what I mean? I'm sure boxing fans from across the world, Australia, South America, you know what I mean? The Caribbean, Europe, all over the world, man, they would have heard about these guys. And so everybody will be looking forward to this fight, you know what I mean? I can't wait to have a little pop at some of my UFC friends, because they're always saying to me things like, this is why boxing is losing its value and why UFC is going to take over, because the best don't fight the best. Well, they are now. We just got to wait for that Gypsy King to sort his life out, you know what I mean? Then we can get the heavyweight scene sorted, you know what I mean? But yeah, this is definitely a step in the right direction.
I'm going to get through these comments, and then I want to get your thoughts on the actual fight itself. Well, I know it's early to make a prediction, but listen, we could change our minds over time. So I'll go through some of these comments. Then I want to hear from, I'll give my opinion on who I wouldn't mind winning, how I think it's going to go. Then I want to see what people in the chat have to say as well. So we got Boxing Pound for Pound Jack in here. He says we're having fish to fry on July 29th, so we know who he's rooting for. Big up Boxing Pound for Pound Jack. AP has said here, are the tickets released yet? I'm seeing them on Ticketmaster. I'm not sure.
I heard that the tickets go on sale on the 2nd of June, is what I heard. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but that is what I heard.
I would wait on those particular channels. I would look at those official channels like Showtime and PBC, because they'll post a link to the tickets. If I wouldn't trust it if I can't see it on any of those official sites yet. Shane's saying the tickets are released next week as well. So
yeah. So it's early June.
Yeah. Himanshu says,
you know what I'm thinking is I might even see if I can. I know it's a long shot, but see if I can pull a few strings and maybe get a ticket, man, or two. Maybe if I can get two, Daryl, I mean, you can go out there and cover it. And I'm going to extend the same offer to my friends on DR Boxing Weekly, that Shane, Nick, and James. Because hey, listen, man, this is an event, bro. This is an event.
Huge. You know it is on the same day as UFC 291. Listen, I'm not the UFC guy, but like Himanshu's saying that UFC 291 is on the same day. Is that really going to affect? I don't know, man. You tell me. I don't know. You guys, Harvey, you lot watch UFC. Me, I don't like. There's nothing that
I do like UFC, but obviously boxing is a much bigger love for me and a priority than UFC. I don't know what UFC fight is taking place that day, but unless it's something like Conor McGregor versus Khabib, I don't think that's going to have too much difference.
Mohammed saying it's a stacked card as well,
the UFC one or the
UFC one? Yep.
Well, I
don't know it, but hey,
I hope that we haven't heard the details yet. I do hope that the undercard for the Spence-Crawford, or is it Crawford-Spence? Who comes first on the promotion?
Spence-Crawford. Spence-Crawford.
Okay. Yeah. I bet they had to. I bet that took some.
That's probably one of the things that held it up for so long.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope that the undercard, man, is worthy of a massive fight, because far too often you see undercards. I mean, even tomorrow, we will be covering the Billam Smith, or the Okoli versus Billam Smith. I need to get these in the right order. It's Lawrence Okoli versus Billam Smith, even though Lawrence Okoli is fighting Billam Smith in his hometown, which is a little bit. But anyway. But the undercard for that one, man, is poor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The promoters, I know that they have budgets and they're constrained, but they need to do more in order to make some of these undercards more appealing. I think the undercard for the Conlan Lopez fight in Ireland, I think that's okay. But the undercard for the Okoli versus Billam Smith is pretty ordinary, man. I mean, there was an undercard fight on there that apparently is not going ahead now. That was the Isaac Chamberlain versus Mikel Lawal fight. That's called off due to Lawal pulling out with injury. But they've not replaced it. I think Michael McKinson's on there, but
Yeah. Let's talk about let me get through some of these comments first. Harvey saying here, Laurie, if you're paying, make it free if you're getting tickets. Himanshu says here, I hope they don't do the thing where they made Canelo wait for the year. Oh yeah, that was crazy. I remember when they did that, when they made Canelo wait. Yeah, that was mad. I
don't think you'll see that with this one. I think
not with this one. No, not with this one.
No.
Michael Maxwell says here, a few years ago, I would have had Spence winning. He's got Crawford winning this one. Let's talk about the actual fight itself, man.
Right.
We'll make our early stance. We'll make our early stance, and predictions on it. And it could change towards the fight. But listen, this is how I'm looking at it. Spence and Crawford, man. And you guys in the chat, let me know what you think. But for me, Crawford for me is if when he's active, he's the best in the world. Unfortunately, he's not active enough, so I can't justify putting him as the number one pound for pound. But when he is active, from what I've seen, he just looks almost unbeatable to me. Do you know what I mean? He's come up to welterweight. He's got how many straight knockouts? Is it 8 or 9 straight knockouts since he's been at welterweight? He's a big puncher. He's going to be the biggest puncher that Errol Spence has faced, for sure. He's going to be a problem. He's a switch hitter. He can bang. Even though he's older than Errol Spence in age, I think that he's fresher in terms of, wear and tear on the body. Errol Spence has had the car crash. He's had the eye injury, as I've said earlier. He can get hit against Ugas. It was a brilliant performance, dominated him. But there was that one moment in that fight where, Ugas wobbled him. It was a temple shot that...
Was it?
It was a little bit.
Off balance?
I think he might have scrambled. I think Spence just hit it well. But anyway.
Okay. I wouldn't argue.
I think, look, it's 50-50. You could pick anyone. I wouldn't really argue your opinion on this. And it's a shame that someone's going to have to lose it. But I think if I had to pick one person, I'd pick Crawford, man.
Well, you say it's a shame that somebody has to lose it, but I'm pretty sure there'll be a rematch clause for both parties. Sometimes you see rematch clauses.
There is a rematch clause. Yeah. There is, yeah. But like for me, yeah, I just think that I think Spence got to stay in the trenches, make it ugly, make it dirty. Crawford can also fight on the inside as well, but Errol Spence needs to bang to the body, not allow Crawford, take away them legs. Crawford has got a lot of pride in him. When he gets hit, he wants to stand and fight. That could benefit Errol Spence. But yeah, it's I just favor Crawford in this one, man. And like you, we got that Jamaican connection, right? We probably want to see Errol Spence win it, even though I like both. But if I'm being honest, I just think that Crawford, and he could even get to Spence, even late. It could be one of them. It's very, very close, but that's what I'm thinking right now. My opinion could change, but right now, I just think the switch hitting, the punching power, the less wear and tear on the body, I'm edging Crawford in this one.
Yeah, listen, man, I can see that. And you know what? It's interesting because you said 3 years ago you would have made Spence favourite. I'm going to slightly go against that. My honest opinion is that 3 years ago, I probably would have made Crawford a firm favourite because of the factors you mentioned there and the fact that, let's face it, Errol Spence, to all intents and purposes, the lifestyle he was leading was not conducive to being a fighter at the top level. There was even people going as far as to say that he had a serious drink problem. And I think he's given interviews after that, saying that, he felt he needed to curtail some of his outside the ring activities. I know he'd split up with his partner and he's got a new girlfriend now and they seem to be a lot more settled. But I think it was after the car crash. I think he had to face up to some home truths. And I think one of the things he had said is that he'd stopped drinking, or if not stopped drinking completely, then he'd certainly rein that back in. So he's far more dedicated now. So I think that is a big factor in the fight, because I think beforehand, if you're talking 3 years ago, that was when you were seeing videos of Errol Spence at fights, clearly drunk, man. And when I say drunk, I mean like proper drunk, man, slurring his words and acting bizarrely. He said he's put all that behind him now. And I have to say that every time I've seen him since, he's looked a lot fresher, a lot better. So I'm happy to see that. So I think, if anything, now I think he probably stands a much better chance. I mean, you made a lot of good points when you were talking about Crawford and, the knockouts. But I actually think that Spence is probably a harder puncher per se than Crawford is. I think Crawford is very accurate and he has filled out in the weight, So he is punching harder, even more so than when he turned over at welterweight. But Errol Spence hits hard. I mean, it's a perfect fight, really, because you've got Crawford, he's the switch hitter, the outboxer, even though he can fight inside. but Spence is known for being a pressure fighter. And when I say pressure fighter, I don't mean he just runs in there like Isaac Cruz with a high guard looking to back you up. He does so behind the jab. He's a southpaw. We said that Crawford's a switch hitter, but Spence is primarily a southpaw. And he uses the jab to close down the distance, and he's very effective to the body. That is one of the hallmarks of Errol Spence, getting in the body. And once he gets inside, he's a combination puncher. Now, we have seen Crawford. There have been question marks against his chin. He's been wobbled a few times. He's been down. He got rocked by Gamboa. He got rocked by Ocampo. No, that Spencer got rocked by Ocampo. But yeah, there's been a few times. I think the Green Machine had him down, didn't it?
That should have been a knockdown.
Yeah, so there have been one or two question marks. I'm not for 1 minute going to say that Crawford is chinny, because he clearly isn't. But, you know, he can be touched, let's be honest. And so can Spence. But I think if I'm going to say you had to give an award to who was the heavier-handed fighter, I'll probably have to lean towards Errol Spence. He's also the bigger man, the physically stronger man. I mean, he has to boil down to make that weight. I mean, in a way, it's amazing that Errol Spence has stayed welterweight for this long, because I can remember him as an amateur. I watched him in the London Olympics, 2012, when he represented the USA. I remember watching him in those games, and he boxed at welterweight then, I think. Or if not, like, I think, yeah, pretty sure it was 67 or 69 kilos. And here he is, like 11 years later, still fighting at welterweight. So I would imagine that if he beats Crawford conclusively or loses conclusively, he will move up in weight. I mean, there's been talk of him moving up to like middleweight anyway. So yeah, there's lots of different intangibles, man. They're both highly skilled. I would say Crawford probably has the edge in terms of skill, footwork and stuff like that. But Spence, he's probably got the edge in terms of size, strength, power. They're both very strong-willed guys, man. You know what I mean? It's not going to be no Ryan Garcia thing where man quit in the ring. You're not going to see that. These two are dogs. They match up well in so many different ways that this cannot fail but to be a great fight. And so I think whoever wins, you're probably going to see a rematch.
I'm looking at the comments here, man, and big up. We got Punch Smollett in here. You know, our old friend Punch Smollett he's joined us. Good to have him here. But I'm looking at the comments, and I haven't seen anyone pick Spence yet. Francisco,
Really? Wow.
Leaning towards Crawford. Harvey, leaning towards Crawford. Dwayne, leaning towards Crawford. Ian, leaning towards Crawford. Is there anyone out there that thinks Spence is going to win? You know, like, and I know when you say you're leaning, it's not cut and dry. It is still close, but it seems to me that the majority are picking Crawford here. You know,
yeah, I can see why that might happen. Because listen, I've got Crawford, if not number one pound for pound, number two. I'm just waiting for Usyk to finish up that business with the Gypsy King, and then, you know, I mean, we will know for me anyway, for sure, who is the pound for pound number one. But for me, it's either Crawford, Usyk, or Usyk, Crawford. Now, if Spence was to beat Crawford, there's an argument to say that he should be pound for pound number one. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But in terms of the actual fight, I could generally make a case for both parties. I mean,
well, let's hear that. Let's hear it. Let's hear the keys to victory for, first of all, Errol. What does he need to do, in your opinion, Errol Spence?
He needs to use his size and his strength, work the body.
You say size, but Crawford has really filled out as a welterweight, and also remember he's got a wrestling background. He's very strong himself. But you're still saying Spence is the bigger, stronger man?
Yeah, because Spence is the career welterweight. Like I said, he's been boxing at welterweight since he was an amateur. So you can just imagine he must have to boil himself down considerably to make that weight. And it's interesting, for his last fight, he brought on board a strength and conditioning coach, something that he said he'd neglected to do over the years because he didn't feel it was necessary. So that in itself tells you that he must be really struggling. For him to do that, he's had to employ a strength and conditioning coach and a nutritionist to get down in weight. He's the bigger man. He's taller. He looks thicker in the shoulders to me. So I'm pretty sure he, on fight night, especially once he's rehydrated, he will be the bigger, stronger man. But then, like you said, Crawford is not exactly weak. And you said quite rightly that he comes from a martial arts background as well. A bit like Lomachenko, which is why Lomachenko has always been very good inside. I was telling people that on the podcast that we did prior to the Haney-Lomachenko fight. I said, look, even though Haney's the bigger man, Lomachenko can handle himself inside because he's very deceptively strong and he's from a martial arts background, so they know how to handle themselves in those tight situations. So it's the same for Crawford. He comes from a wrestling background and he's very strong. So listen, they match up well in so many ways. It could even come down to the tactics. Who gets their tactics right? Like I said, I would imagine that Spence will want to initiate. He will want to get inside and really make the fight. And then you're going to see Crawford with the sharp counters. He can fight inside as well. But then Spence, he can box at range too.
Can Crawford, one thing that Crawford, and big up Albert Coleman, he's got Crawford winning by 10th round knockout. Michael Maxwell says here that Crawford will have too much will and desire to win. But is it important for what a lot of you guys might be missing here is Crawford tends to start off slow, and Errol Spence could build up a momentum. He could build up a point lead here by starting off quick as he can do. Crawford does tend to start off slow. We saw against Kell Brook, that fight was until the knockout. Brook was holding himself pretty well in there,
Against who?
Against Crawford. Kell Brook was.
I don't know, man.
He started slow. He started slow in that fight.
Yeah.
He doesn't tend to start off very quick in fights. Will that be an advantage for Errol?
That's a common opponent, of course, because both you and me were there when Errol Spence won the title.
Well, Errol had Brook much nearer to his peak than.
Yeah. But that's the thing, Errol Spence, he carries that power late, man. He's got good stamina. I mean, I've heard people say that he does endless rounds of sparring in the gym. Maybe Anthony Joshua will be able to tell us more about that because obviously he's training with him now. You know what I mean? By the way, I think that's an excellent move that Anthony Joshua's made by going to Derek James. I think Derek James is one of the best trainers in boxing. Ryan Garcia's apparently rocked up there now as well. So
yeah, Charlo. So he's got very good sparring.
Frank Martin, you know what I mean? So yeah, listen, man, it could come down to who gets it. And you know what it could come down to as well? I might have to, I know this may sound like a bit of a cop-out. I don't mean it to be, but I think it is a salient point to make. It might be interesting to see how the two of them get on in training, how they look and how they sound. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can get a feel for how
they're both looking
good the fighters looking in training.
They're both looking in very good shape already.
Both of them. Yeah. Well, they would have known that this fight was on the verge of being signed, so they would have been in the gym. I'm pretty sure of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, listen, I think like my keys to victory here is for Errol Spence. Like I said, get off to a good start first of all, because I know that Crawford can start slow at times. Get off to a good start, build momentum, work the body as he's very good at doing. One of the best body punchers in the game, Errol Spence is. Try and really disrupt the rhythm of Crawford before he gets into one. Because once he's in that rhythm, once he's flowing, switch hitting, once he, gets in his groove, it's hard to get him out of it. So I think that's what Errol needs to do, build up some momentum and then try and wear Crawford down late. Crawford, as we know, can get dragged out of his comfort zone. Like he does love to, he can scrap and he can forget boxing for a moment and his pride could get the better of him. And he can go in there and fight. Do you know what I mean? He's done that plenty of times. Does that suit Errol Spence if Crawford goes down that route? Those are the things I'm looking for if I'm Errol Spence. But as for Crawford, he's just got to be on his game. Pump out the jab, use a bit of movement. He's got better lateral movement, I'd say, than Errol Spence has. Try and walk him onto counters. We've seen Errol Spence get hit with counters. He has a high guard, Errol Spence. But Crawford can, hit around that, drop some feints in there. It's a fascinating fight, man. It really is.
Yeah. It really is. Mean, listen, if that fight begins and you see Crawford walking Errol Spence down, that's not a good look for Errol Spence. I would imagine that as soon as the bell goes, Errol Spence will be looking to take control of what we call the real estate. He'll be looking to take center of the ring, work behind the jab. He won't walk in recklessly. That's not his style. He will have a fairly high guard. He'll keep the jab pumping. Errol Spence has got very good work rate. Like I said, he's got excellent stamina. And he will look to establish that southpaw jab and then look to get inside. And once he gets inside, he'll be looking to land a hard body shots in combinations and then come up to the head or head and then down to the body, whatever the case might be, whatever openings he sees. And then he's a pretty powerful puncher himself with the left. He'll be looking to, land that and see how it goes. Because I think physically, the more I think about it, he has more advantages physically. Maybe speed, Crawford might edge him on speed. I'm not even sure. But then what's the thing that beats speed? Timing. Errol Spence has got excellent timing. He can counter punch too. Crawford, like you said, bit more of an outboxer, bit more of a counter puncher, but then he can do a lot of those things that Errol Spence can do as well. I mean, some people would say that he does pretty much all those things that Errol Spence is good at. Crawford can do that as well, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But I just think that if Errol Spence is going to win this fight, he's got to have to make his size and strength and the fact that he's the bigger man tell. And then, of course, like I said, I believe that in terms of punching power, even though Crawford's got a lot of stoppages recently, in fact, all his fights at welterweight, he's stopped. He stopped them all, put them down. But then I think that Errol Spence would have stopped all those guys too, if I'm being honest.
I just don't know if I agree with you on that. Spence would have stopped those guys as well. Except for Sean Porter, he didn't stop Porter. Yeah. But the size thing, I don't know if maybe it's me. I don't know if that's a huge advantage for Spence. I don't know if it is. I don't know.
It's not just the size; it's the strength Errol's got. He's very strong for a welterweight.
Is he really?
Yeah, he is.
You think so?
I think he is, man. I think he is.
You think he's that much bigger and stronger?
Think about all Errol Spence's fights. You never see that guy get backed up ever. Think about it. You never see him get backed up. He's always the one backing man up, forcing him to the ropes, pushing him off, landing body punches, landing uppercuts. Even when he fought Sean Porter, we know how strong Sean Porter is. Remember that? He was engaging Sean Porter, pushing Sean Porter back. And Sean Porter was like...
That was nip and tuck. That was really nip and tuck. That knockdown.
But that was because of the styles of the two fighters. When Crawford fought Porter, he was a lot more on the outside and then waiting for it to take his opportunity with countering.
We've got Punch Smollett here. He says here, he's so strong, but he couldn't stop Mikey Garcia, a natural 140-pounder. Come on, bro.
Yeah, but he could stop Ugas, who's also known as a very strong fighter. Ugas was coming off his career best win over Pacquiao. And apart from that brief moment you talked about where he rocked Spence, let's be honest, man, he beat Ugas up.
He beat him up.
Pretty much from start to finish. That was a very impressive performance. But like I said, they've got a common opponent in the Sean Porter fight, yeah? In the Sean Porter fights. Like I said, they went kind of toe-to-toe, but Errol was shoving Sean Porter off. Something that you don't really see other fighters do, because we all know that Sean Porter is very strong as a welterweight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's an intriguing matchup, man, an intriguing fight. It could even come down to, like I said, who gets their tactics right on the day. And the trainers will no doubt have a say in that. I mean, of the two trainers, you got Bomac, who trains Crawford. He's a very good trainer. And you got Derek James. But if I had to give an edge in the training department, I'll probably go for Derek James.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of intangibles here, man. This is what makes it such a great fight. And like you said, Joel, 3 years ago, I definitely would have gone for Crawford, because I was a bit concerned at the way Spence was leading his lifestyle. I remember being on your show and talking about it and saying, listen, man, what I'm seeing from him is not the actions of a top-class fighter. He was almost taking his talent for granted. And he's actually come out and said as much in interviews and said, look, man, you know what I mean, maybe that car crash, as horrible as it was, you know what I mean, took all his teeth out, you know what I mean? It was a blessing in disguise in some ways, because it forced him to reevaluate and reappraise what he was doing in his private life. So he's much more tuned in and focused now, even though I'd still think both of them should be fighting more. I mean, Crawford, he had a very good win against Avanesian, didn't he? I mean, people on this side of the pond, we rate Avanesian. We've seen what he's done over here to British fighters and that, and European fighters. He walked through them.
Knockout.
And with Crawford, You know what I mean? But then, you know, let's be honest. I think if Errol Spence fought Avanesyan, he would probably do the same thing to him. So they're so evenly matched, bro.
Let's I mean, yeah. I'm just thinking, like, you know, this fight here, man. We've got 2 months until the fight actually takes place. We've brought this pod back, you know, to celebrate the announcement of this fight. I don't know how often we're going to be doing these still. I don't know. I guess if there is a demand for it, we can bring it back, you know, and preview this particular fight. But I just think while we're here, we've got about 10 minutes left or so. While we're here, it's just good to have everyone in the chat. If anyone else has any more questions they want to ask us, you know, I've seen a few questions here. Even if it's not related to Spence and Crawford, we can take a few before we sign out. But we'll be back for more live streams for sure. I'm not sure how consistent it will be yet, but we will be bringing them back.
Hopefully we can do a few more, man. I mean, listen, this fight, right? Let me tell you just how big this fight potentially can be. So, as you know, Daryl, got 3 brothers. There's 4 of us, and we got a WhatsApp group. Now, I would say that I'm the only real considered boxing fan. We all like our boxing, but I would describe, say, maybe 2 out of 3 of them as casuals, yeah? But it was interesting. I'm in a WhatsApp group with the 4 of us. And as soon as that fight was announced, man, everybody in the WhatsApp group would say, yeah, man, it's about time that fight happened. This is what boxing needs. You know what I mean? All the things that we've said on the show, that's what was the sentiment being expressed in the WhatsApp group. Great fight. This needs to happen. Yeah, man, I can't wait. So you imagine that's just a simple snapshot of what's happening in my family. And I'm pretty sure, Daryl, you got mates who you would call as casual fans. And I bet you can relate a similar experience. They've all been texting you. I mean, listen, you've come out of retirement to do this podcast just on the back of this fight being announced alone. And you know what? I really hope commercially it does well. I mean, listen, obviously I've got no horse in the race. You know what I mean? It's their money. I'm not going to get none of it. You know what I mean? But I think for boxing needs this fight, man. You know what I mean? We've got people like clowns like Jake Paul, you know what I mean, rocking up, telling people that he's the face of boxing because, you know what I mean, he thanks to people like him, you know what I mean. I would argue that that crowd that watch him are not real boxing fans. And I'm not sure how many of them even cross over to watch boxing anyway. So I'm really glad that the real fighters are getting the shine, if you see what I mean. So when Jake Paul announces his fight with Nate Diaz and says, yeah, I'm bringing the eyes back into boxing, it's ridiculous. These are the fights that bring the eyes back. These are not Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, these are the fights right here, man.
These are the proper fights, not misfits. Even though, you know, I mean, we covered misfits on DR Boxing and I enjoyed doing it. But let's be honest, man, they're separate sports. This is proper boxing. You know what I mean?
Conscious of time, so let's get through some of these questions pretty quickly, man. Punch Smollett here, he says here, I ain't forgotten about this question, so I'm bringing it back. Let's quickly run through these. Do you agree with the WBC ranking Loma over Stevenson? I'm going to say that part of that is Stevenson's fault, really, for you know, being so out there and open with Loma, saying that Loma won the fight. I guess he can't complain about the WBC ranking him over himself. But yeah, what do you think about that one?
But listen, man, we all know that Lomachenko is a how can I put it? A protected species, isn't he? Let's be honest. Everyone loves Loma, and a bit like Canelo, he seems to get these gifts, man. He got the franchise belt, remember? That meant that he could have avoided Haney them years ago. And listen, man, Loma's a great fighter. But listen, personally, I thought Haney beat him. I'd like to see a rematch of that fight. It was a very close fight. Could have gone either way. But I scored it at the time 6-5-1, 6 rounds to Haney, 5 to Lomachenko, and 1 even. I know a lot of people, especially in the immediate aftermath, were screaming robbery. It wasn't a robbery for me. I thought Haney won. And in fact, a lot of people who were screaming robbery, including Shakur Stevenson, by the way, he's one in a growing number of people said, I've since rewatched the fight and I had Haney winning or a draw. Or it could have gone either way, I think he said. So,
yeah.
But in answer to your question, I'm not surprised, you know what I mean? Especially because of the fallout of the Haney fight. I think one thing that does irk me a little bit is that fighters like Lomachenko, and this may sound a little bit at odds given that he didn't get the decision last week, they do tend to get treated very favorably by the governing bodies. You know what I mean? So I'm not surprised.
Smith versus Beterbiev, that fight
great fight.
That got made official this week, I believe. When's that happening, actually? Smith Beterbiev. Is that August?
I think it's in August, yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't said where yet.
That's it. That's going to be in probably Canada, isn't it? Or France? Nah, it's not in England. I know that.
Beterbiev is a Chechen Russian, but he lives in Canada. And he does have big-time promoters behind him. But I'm not sure if Smith is a big enough draw to have it in this country.
No, I don't think so.
Because Callum Smith's a very good fighter, but he's not a big ticket seller.
I got Beterbiev in that one.
Yeah, so have I. Yeah, I think it'd be. But I mean, I think, listen, as long as it's not the Callum Smith that turned up when he fought Canelo, when he pretty much froze. I think he's even admitted that himself, that he never gave of his best that night for whatever reason. I think the occasion got to him. He's going to be under similar pressure when he fights Beterbiev, especially if they fight in Canada. Because, you know, the aura of Beterbiev, I mean, I think he's the only champion in boxing still got a 100% KO record. You know what I mean? And even though Anthony Yard pushed him and did very well, he still ended up knocking him out. You know what I mean? So that guy is, when you talk about beasts in boxing, man, he's got to be right up there. He's got to be on everyone's pound for pound list as well. That is a hard ask, but Callum Smith, especially since he's had Buddy McGirt training him now, he's looked a bit different, man. And he's punching real hard with that right hand. So he's definitely got a chance. I mean, Beterbiev is what? Must be getting on for 40 years old now.
38, I think. 38, around that age, yeah. Big news here of Maurizio Lara. You know, he came in well overweight.
Yeah, that was poor. That was poor.
Dwayne, has Wood not pulled out already? Or what's the latest with that? Because he's saying, should he pull out? I thought he was on the verge of pulling out. But
I saw an interview with Ben Davison. I saw an interview with Ben Davison, and they were saying that they were going to discuss it and that he'd be minded to advise Lee Wood to pull out. But he seemed to be suggesting that Lee Wood would still want to go ahead with a fight. If I'm Ben Davison, right, and I've got, listen, his job, his responsibility is to have his fighters' best interests at heart, I would be saying pull out and fight somebody else then. You know what I mean? A last-minute replacement. I mean, I know that the punters are going to get shortchanged, but in a way they've been shortchanged anyway because it was supposed to be for a title. Lara's now lost that title. He's been stripped. And Lee Wood can only win it if he beats Lara. And I think even that's a bit unfair. I think really they should award the fight to Lee Wood. Yeah. I really hope Lee Wood beats him if they do fight, man, because to me, that's tantamount to cheating. You must have known that you were struggling with the weight. So he's deliberately come in heavy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think you should forfeit his titles for that. And I think that the title should be awarded to the opponent, which is obviously Lee Wood. And if I'm Ben Davison, I'm saying probably pull out. Although, you know what I mean, the promoter, he's going to want the fight to go ahead because, you know what I mean, all the tickets sold and all the rest of it. But I'd be saying to Lee Wood, I'll fight somebody, but not that guy. Because he cheated. It's as simple as that. And I've got a lot of respect for Lara. I was actually tipping him to win. But if they do fight, I really hope Lee Wood knocks him out. Because to me, I don't know what you think, but I think that's cheating.
Big up Dread Electric here. He's back. Welcome. Yeah, feels good to be back. Yes, sir. In the chat here, he's put salute. We got a new guy here called Kutai. I hope I pronounced your name right, brother. He's all the way from Turkey. You know what I mean? So big him up. Wow. He's joining the chat here. Good to see you here, bro. Punch Mullet has said here, shouldn't Lara have had time to drop those pounds? I'm sure he would have.
Yeah, apparently he didn't want to.
He didn't want to.
But listen, he's a professional fighter. He's been in the country all week. He must have known he was struggling with the weight. So you do what you have to do to make the weight cut. I mean, you see it in UFC all the time, where these guys that they crash the weight and they have to, you know, resort to these drastic measures in order to. He should have had to do that because listen, he made the weight last time he was here, okay, didn't he? So he's obviously crashed it and not done it right. Yeah. But that's his problem. That's not Lee Wood's problem. That's not the promoter's problem. That's not the fans who have bought tickets. You know what I mean? He sold the sport short on this one, man. He needs to be punished. And I don't think that the punishment of stripping him of his titles is enough. I would imagine Lee Wood as well will also be pursuing a hefty compensation in terms of, the finances, you know what I mean? So
like
if the fight does go ahead, probably Lara will probably be lucky if he ends up with half his purse.
Looks like the fight is still happening, according to Francisco. Kutai, let's put you up on here, bro. He's put here, would AJ versus Wilder sell the most pay-per-views? Out of who though, bro? Out of who? I mean, is it out of, you're talking about between this and Spence and Crawford, or Usyk and Fury, AJ and Fury?
I think that is a good question.
I think it will sell a lot anyway. So I think it will sell a lot.
Because I think that in terms of like genuine pay-per-view and ticket sellers, and like in terms of big names in boxing, AJ's got to be up there with the likes of Canelo and people like that. But it's interesting. I saw something a little while ago. They were talking in terms of American pay-per-view fighters. The two biggest ones currently are Tank and Errol Spence. Not so much Crawford, but definitely Tank and Errol Spence are the ones that tend to do a lot. Obviously, you got Ryan Garcia now. He had his first pay-per-view fight, and the pay-per-view sales for that fight went through the roof. Although it could be argued that a lot of those people that bought that fight were probably like TikTokers and Instagram fans of Ryan Garcia.
He says in history, I think in the most pay-per-views, would AJ versus Wilder sell the most pay-per-views in history? It's a big ask.
I don't know. It's interesting because although AJ versus Wilder is a let's be honest, in terms of pure kudos, it's a lower level than Fury Usyk. But to me, that would generate more pay-per-view vibes, wouldn't it? AJ versus Wilder is a more exciting
transatlantic thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you got the two characters, chalk and cheese. The fact that that fight could genuinely go either way. It's literally who lands first for me in that fight. So literally is, because I still think that Wilder is damaged goods after the 3 Fury fights, even though he had that very good win against Elenius. I think if AJ touches him, man, first, he's gone.
Yeah,
and vice versa.
Wilder touches AJ first.
Yeah, well, this is what I say. It could be the first one to land properly.
Do you know what? My thoughts on that are?
Listen, don't underestimate the work that Derek James is going to do with AJ. Look, he's going to make him a better fighter. I'm sure of it.
What I'm saying on that fight is, is can you see Wilder landing on AJ in that fight? The answer is yes. And when he does, that's going to be the issue, because Wilder's not just going to get blown out. It took Fury a long time to get him out of there, even when he was beating him up every single round. He didn't get him out of there. AJ is going to, unless he has some one-punch knockout over Wilder, I just think that Wilder is going to land at some point, and that's where the problem's going to be. That's where
you're right. But then, listen, man, AJ's a serious puncher as well. When he lets his hands go, we know that recently he's not been doing that enough. But I do think he's a much better boxer than Wilder. I don't think anyone can dispute that. AJ is a much better boxer than Wilder is. And I think if he can, listen, he's going to get hit, but if he can ride some of the shots and land his own, I think. No, seriously, I know I might be in a minority here, but I think AJ's got a, maybe not 50-50. I think it's 60-40. Some people are saying, oh, it's a done deal. No chance. And like I said, I like the fact that AJ's linked up with Derek James. I think that's probably the best trainer he could have gone to. And I think that they will make him better. He'll get better sparring out there. He'll be in the gym with champions, man. That's bound to rub off on him. Whereas Wilder, he does his own thing in the country with Malik Scott. And, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. To me, if AJ can get out of the first 2 or 3 rounds, it's his fight.
Well, but Daniel Chambers, I see you, man. Good to have you back in the chat. I see you here, Daniel Chambers. Mohammed as well. He's put here, Fury posted on Insta that he wants the AJ fight in September. And this guy changes his mind. Obviously, I'm not talking about you, Mohammed, but Fury, I thought he was fighting the Australian guy. I thought he was fighting Parker. I thought he was fighting the cruiserweight. I don't know what he's doing.
He might as well fight Joe Parker at this rate. He might as well do an exhibition. You know what I mean? But listen, Fury, listen, he's called cry wolf too many times now, man, for me anyway. The guy's a very disreputable person. I think that's the word I was looking to find earlier. He's a disreputable man, and basically means that you cannot trust anything that comes out of his mouth. He literally says one thing, not even one day, it could be within hours, and something completely different the next. He said he's how many times he said he's retired, by the way, as well? How many times we heard that one? Mm-hmm. He sacked his trainer, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's not fighting anymore, he's fighting Francis Ngannou. Then a couple of weeks ago, he got embroiled with John Jones, who would absolutely tear him a new one in the cage. You know what I mean? It's just absolute BS, man. And even the most hardened of Fury fans must be getting a bit tired of his act by now. And it is an act, let's be honest. You should have had the Usyk fight. He clearly didn't want that fight for whatever reason. I'm not saying he's scared, but he clearly ducked Usyk. Usyk called his bluff. You know what I mean? He's coming with his 70-30, even though Usyk is an established champion with more belts in it, with, you know what I mean, been around, 2-time world champion. He treated the guy abysmally, and the man still called your bluff and said, yeah, 70-30, yeah, I'll take it. You know what I mean? And then he didn't want it. Then you're calling him all these names, engaging in all that jingoistic nonsense, calling him rabbit, being very disrespectful. There's trash talk and there's disrespectfulness. Yeah. And he's crossed the line on so many occasions, and with his boorish, crass, tacky, stupid, childish behavior. And some people out there still think it's funny. But I do think that the people out there that think it's funny it's an ever decreasing circle, isn't it? You've seen a lot of people, man, online. Yeah, I used to be a Fury fan, but now that's it now. So I think Tyson Fury is one of those sportsmen who live in that kind of ivory tower. They think that anything they do, the public are just going to gravitate to it and accept it. But I think maybe it's kind of hitting home to him by now that people have grown tired of the act, and he's saying, listen, man, are you going to fight Usyk or not? Because we're not really interested in anything else you do.
2 more questions here before we go. We'll do 2 more. And I just wanted to flag this up, man. Punch one that says here, this is a rare occasion where I agree with Laurie. Joshua Sparks, Wilder, easy. But there's a good question here from our guy Kutai, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But it says here, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez, that fight taking place in a couple of weeks, I think. How do you see it going? I see Josh Taylor beating the brakes of Teofimo. I do.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, or even a year and a half ago, I would have said yes. But Josh Taylor, he had that fight with Catterall. He clearly lost that fight. And I have to say, I wasn't very impressed with the way Josh handled that, to be honest, man. He didn't give Jack Catterall the rematch. And he's sort of ducking and diving a little bit with it. I thought he was a bit arrogant. But listen, he's got this fight. I think this is a very good fight, actually, because it's a real crossroads fight. Because Teofimo, let's face it, man, his recent performances have not been stellar by any stretch of the imagination. But both fighters need a win. I mean, Josh Taylor, a couple of years ago, was on everyone's pound for pound list, and quite rightly so. Undisputed champion at light welterweight, gone over to America, done an absolute number on what's the guy's name? Ramirez, yeah. Had that win over Regis Prograis, which is a great fight. And Josh Taylor was looking the business, but then had that fight with Catterall, and his career seems to have stagnated a little bit, I think it's fair to say, since then. So, okay, he didn't fight Catterall, which is the fight we all wanted to see, but this is probably the next best fight for him. You know what I mean? And it's a very winnable fight. But I do think that Lopez is pretty much fighting for his career. And Lopez, despite some of his antics, which are just crass, and again, he's another one like Fury that I've got no time for him as a person. But you got to say that on his day, man, when he gets it right, as you saw when he fought Lomachenko and Comey and people like that, he's a very good fighter. And he has the power and the athleticism and the skill to give Josh Taylor problems. I've got no doubt about that. But I wouldn't make Josh Taylor a favourite, but it's a long time since I've seen Josh Taylor look like that guy.
Tio ain't look good either. Who? He didn't look good. Tio didn't look good in this last fight.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think Teofimo Lopez is basically fighting for his career, and that could make him a dangerous man. You know what I mean? So that is going to be an intriguing fight as well. I lean towards Josh Taylor, but you can't write Teofimo Lopez out completely, because despite what I say about him being an absolute clown outside the ring, he does have a lot of talent. And if he can harness it and focus and get it right on the night, he will give Josh Taylor work. I've got no doubt about it.
Last question here before we log out. Punch Mullet says, do you think Canelo would consider the Conor McGregor fight, as I think that comes close to breaking the records?
Listen, man, I think I'd probably give Conor McGregor a good fight. Man. Have you seen the size of him? And let's be honest, man, I don't know if you've seen his interviews recently, man. He needs to sort his life out, man, because I'm telling you now, man, there's some dark stuff going on with that guy to me. I've seen him a few times, man. The way he's talking, the way he looks like there's some issues going on. Let's just leave it like that. You know, it looks like there's a few issues going on there, and I'm a bit worried for Conor McGregor, man. He's not looking good. You've only got to look at some of the recent interviews. Talking about the Katie Taylor fight, seen him over in America. He keeps rocking up at fights and making a complete buffoon of himself. He needs to sort his life out. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Big up Kutai here. Francisco says as well here, Taylor versus Lopez is a great fight, but Fulton and Inoue is the most intriguing fight of the year because of the talent, style, and athleticism matchup. Totally agree. He says here, hopefully TBL will come on to talk about that one, which kind of segues nicely into, you know, our little ending here. I guess we need to decide what we're going to do with the shows. I have took a little break from this. This is our first stream for the year, because I think we ended it at the end of last year. So it's been a while. We'll contemplate on how often we're going to bring these back, But yeah, it's good to just have the gang back in here again. Good to really like talk boxing with you guys. Obviously, you, my dad. It's great to have everybody here. And yeah, we'll make a decision on that going forward. But he says here, does Laurie have his own channel? Laurie, I'll let you answer that question there.
Well, I don't have my own boxing channel, but I do work for DR Sports, and we do have a boxing channel within the framework of DR Sports. So DR Sports covers, as you can imagine, various different sports, boxing being one of them. So we got a DR boxing show that we do, and we do a weekly show on there once a week, at least once a week, with myself. The other contributors are Nick Francis, Shane Willoughby, and James Toon. We also do live streams of fights. We've been doing that for a few weeks now. We've got one tomorrow. We're covering the Lawrence Okoli versus Chris Billen fight, world title fight. So hopefully everyone here tune into that. And we're going to have Daryl's agreed to do some stuff for DR Boxing as well in the coming weeks. So, and listen, Daryl, back to you. I hope it's been a pleasure doing this. I understand your reasons for, stepping aside and pursuing other stuff. It would be great to do more stuff like this. I really enjoy it. When it comes to talking about boxing, man, I could pretty much talk about boxing all day long. It's interesting because I was in the gym today. I like going to the gym, as you guys know. And there was a guy I met up with in there. He's a big boxing fan. And after my workout, we was there for about another hour talking about all things boxing. And of course, the Errol Spence and Crawford fight came up, and he had a lot of opinions about that as well, similar to the ones you've expressed as well, actually. So, yeah, listen, man, I think right now it's a good time for boxing. As I said, I've been quite irritated by people like Jake Paul, not so much KSI, but people like Jake Paul giving himself this moniker as the savior of boxing and that he's brought eyes on the sport. Yeah, you may have brought eyes on the sport, but you haven't brought what I call real boxing fans to the table. Just been a bunch of casual guys who, Instagram followers of these guys. And, then they put on fights. Fair enough. I've got no problem with that per se, but it's not real boxing. KSI versus Joe Fournier, for me, is not a real boxing fight. That is a separate entity, and that should be recognized as such. What we're seeing tomorrow with Lawrence Okoli, Billen Smith, and, let's talk about it as well, the Michael Conlan Lopez fight and the Lee Wood Lara, if that fight does take, those are proper boxing fights, man, that proper boxing fans appreciate. So, yeah, it's important to make that distinction.
Yeah. Punch Wallet, yeah, no issue. There's no issue here. Really, it was just a decision that I made. Takes a lot out of you. It can do, and I think at that stage when I did pause the streams for a little while, I just had a lot going on, work, everything else. Nothing too personal, but just work and all that stuff was taken over. So yeah, I just made that decision to stop it for the time being. Anyway. Dwayne has said here, whatever you decide, always a pleasure to tune in. Kute said, nice Arsenal shirt. And Hans Mullet said here, Boxing Lowdown in my top 5 YouTube boxing channels. We need more. Listen, I appreciate the love, man. We'll be back with some more for sure. But myself and
I think, Darren, what it is, right? You're like a lot of boxers, isn't it? Once you've got that boxing bug in you, it's very hard to eradicate it completely. And obviously, this fight here has scratched that itch. Which is what I'm saying. This is why this fight is going to be massive. Because like I said, you have come out with this podcast today. Like I said, I'm in a WhatsApp group with my brothers. As soon as this fight was announced, they were all over it. Guys at the gym who are not big boxing fans, they're casuals. They're all rocking up and asking, what do you think? Do you think it will happen? Who's going to win? Why? You know what I mean? Once you get that buzz around a fight, you know it's a big fight, man. So, yeah, this is going to be a massive fight.
It'll be a huge fight, man. Be a huge fight, but we'll be back for some more. We'll take it offline. We'll keep you guys informed. But in the meantime, man, thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend. Over here in the UK, we have the bank holiday weekend. It's going to be some good weather. All you guys across the globe, in Turkey, America, we've got a guy in Florida. Yes, sir. You know what I mean? So all you guys, man, enjoy your weekend, man. And we'll be back with another stream for sure. We'll let you guys know in due course, man. Peace out.
Definitely.